The internet is becoming less free. When I was a kid, the internet as we know it was a pretty new thing. Those of us who dove into it at a young age remember how wild and uncensored it was.
Back in like 2007, 2006, going through fashion forums and seeing pop culture for the first time.
I played a lot of kids games, and if we played like Clifford the Big Red Dog.
Webkins.
Neopets.
People were opposed to putting all of their personal information online in their profile, but we all just were okay with it in the end.
Now our entire waking life is connected to the internet. That's a big change.
Yeah.
But now that most of our time on the internet is spent on a handful of social media sites, the promise of the free internet is only as free as Meta's terms of services allow. As these major sites get more and more of our screen time, are we trading our online freedom for the promise of connection? My name's Simon. I was born in '97, so I've never known a world without the internet. I've been having offline conversations with people in the same boat about massive changes in our digital lives and how we relate to each other. This is Word of Mouth, the show where we take those conversations online and get you up to speed on exactly what's going on. Let's get into it. These online platforms have the power to restrict or flat out silence people that rely on them to be able to connect with their audience, but there's no doubt that censorship has helped curb the darker sides of the internet as well. When YouTube started in 2005, they were recommending videos based strictly on view count, and short of nudity, violence, and copyrighted content, you could post pretty much anything to the site. Then in 2012, they started recommending videos based on time spent watching. By 2016, the first personalized algorithms were introduced. Now, YouTube openly removes content they call borderline, which means stuff that brushes up against the community guidelines but doesn't clearly violate them. They included COVID conspiracy videos as part of this approach before outright banning any misleading coronavirus content, including unsubstantiated medical advice. To curb misinformation, YouTube will default to sources it deems reliable for news, historical events, and science. These policies were put in place after too many examples of YouTube serving increasingly far-right and extremist content that radicalized people like the Christchurch shooter.
Censorship in a positive front is often about preventing the spread of misinformation. And I think in a time like COVID, when there is rampant misinformation about things like vaccines, it's actually important for the public health of everyone. So I think censorship is one of those things that it's a double-edged sword in that there's definitely a positive of it, but the misuse of it can be very problematic for everyone in society.
You've seen this story countless times. Somebody gets banned or censored on an app, the story goes viral, and the company will claim that it wasn't targeted, it was just a mistake. Rinse and repeat. Because while these algorithms are sometimes thought of as neutral, it's been shown how they might discriminate against already marginalized groups. That's because these algorithms can inherit biases from the creators that make them. Kayla Logan is a body positivity activist who set out to expose these biases in Instagram's algorithm.
Instagram deletes or censors photos that show any more than 60% of skin. The reason why this is problematic is because if you take a fat person and you take a thin person and they're both wearing swimsuits, well, the fat person is obviously going to have a lot more skin showing. Therefore, they're going to be in violation of the algorithm and be censored. They're going to take that photo down. Therefore, it's inherently fat phobic, and they are continuing to silence an already oppressed and marginalized community.
Then on TikTok, phrases like Black Lives Matter and supporting Black voices were being flagged as inappropriate. In two separate instances, the phrase Asian women was being omitted from auto-captioning, and then the hashtag intersex was just gone from the app. And TikTok said that these were all just errors, but even giving them the benefit of the doubt, what other censorship could be going on that we don't notice? Censorship comes in many flavors, and the companies that are doing it may not own up to it. That makes this problem uniquely hard to track, because usually all we have to go on are the stories of those censored. With that being said, have you ever experienced censorship online?
I feel like I always preempt a censor. For example, there is a painting in my room, apartment that has an exposed breast in it. And sometimes, so scandalous, sometimes I will like film a thing and I'll forget that it's in the background. I have to do it again without it in the background, which sucks because it's a beautiful painting. And it's so ridiculous that like a nipple can't be in it.
When I say anything about criticizing whiteness or criticizing any form of oppression, I'm like immediately silenced. I get a warning on Instagram. People report me. And people always say, oh, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. That doesn't exist for oppressed folks. If you're oppressed, if you face any form of oppression, freedom of expression, free speech, it doesn't apply to you because it only applies to those who do not face that oppression, because they actually have that freedom. They have that liberty. People who are facing oppression don't have that freedom. They're not afforded that privilege, which is a majority of the globe, right?
The people I follow, they experience a lot more censorship than I do, especially like Black fat creators. They often get shadow banned by Instagram a lot just because of the content they're producing, because apparently it like doesn't fill their guidelines, even though, you know, you see like some white thinner person doing the same thing and it's getting like a bazillion views and nothing's happening. Like they're fine, they're just getting more popular. So I've definitely seen that a lot, especially with fatter creators.
Last year, news organizations got a hold of a memo that TikTok had sent its moderators telling them to keep videos of people with ugly facial looks, abnormal body shapes, and signs of poverty off of the For You page. Then TikTok responded by saying that it was an early, blunt attempt at curbing bullying on the platform. It's hard to see how normalizing conventional attractiveness by just flooding the For You page with underwear models would curb bullying. Doesn't that just make it harder for kids on the platform who don't fit the mold? To add to that, internal documents revealed that the real reason for the censorship was that they thought that unattractiveness and poverty on the For You page would decrease new user retention rate. The internet ought to belong to the people. Regardless of the censorship tactic that social media companies are using right now, they've made one thing abundantly clear. They're ready to restrict creators' platforms, sometimes secretly, to create a more homogenous viewing experience. So why do they do it? For profit? For public good? We used to think of the internet as this democratic place where the cream rises to the top. But what if the cream gets deplatformed and all that rises is just what's appealing to advertisers? And as censorship grows, it's not hard to imagine second-order effects. Any kid with a phone can post a viral video, but what if they get discouraged from posting in the first place because they've never seen anybody that looks like them on the internet? Because they've all been banned. Stay safe out there.